was a cold night in 1938, in a small village tucked between the mountains of Erzurum. A child came into the world. The wind carried his first breath across the mountains. One day, his voice would be heard all across the world, inspiring millions. His home was a humble one, filled with faith and grace. Inside, a mother whispered the Almighty's names over her newborn son. That night, under a sky heavy with stars, our story began. A story not of power or wealth, but of service, of light, of one heart given entirely to Allah. Fethullah Gülen was born in a difficult and harsh time of history. The Adhan had been translated to Turkish, and many religious institutions were closed with the accusation of being against the Republic. In fact, in 1938, when his father took the newborn to register him legally, the civil registry officer refused to register him due to the name's religious undertone. Instead, the family had to wait until 1942 when his younger brother was born. Even then, the officer registered him as Fethullah Gülen instead of Muhammad Fethullah Gülen, as the family had intended, and his baby brother was named as Saifullah instead of Sibghatullah. He grew up in a home where faith was not a theory, it was life itself. Every day began with the Adhan and ended with prayer. Every corner of the house was filled with remembrance of Allah. His mother, Rafia Hanum, was a woman who glowed with piety and sincerity. Before the sun rose, she would wash her hands in the freezing water, spread her prayer rug before the stove, and whisper through her tears. Little Fethullah would awaken to that sound, a mother's supplication, and something in his heart would stir before he even knew what prayer was. She was his first teacher and his first mirror of mercy. She taught him the Quran letter by letter. With her help, Fethullah was able to complete his first khatam at the age of 4. His father, Ramiz Efendi, was the imam of the village. In the Gülen household, the lamp would stay on the whole night. Ramiz Efendi would sit with his books, pages yellowed, corners torn. Fethullah, still a boy, would sit beside him in silence. About his father, Fethullah would later say, "My father taught me my religion and my faith. He was very careful to ensure I didn't stray. He was my first Arabic teacher and started me on the path to becoming a hafiz. After the night prayer, he would memorize the Quran with me. I don't ever remember my father getting angry with me. In that house, learning was not a task, it was a form of worship. Love was not a feeling, it was a duty. And faith was not inherited, it was built, layer by layer, through tears, patience, and prayer. From a mother who loved without condition and a father who taught without anger, a child learned what it meant to live for something greater than himself. He did not yet know that his love, this discipline, this rhythm of devotion would one day move nations, heal hearts, and light a path for generations to come. In 1949, when Ramiz Efendi was appointed as the imam of a neighboring village, the family moved to Alvad, Turkey. This move brought young Fethullah's formal schooling to an early pause. He was only in the 3rd grade, yet his thirst for knowledge did not fade. In time, he would complete his primary education by passing the required exams, all while continuing his studies in the madrasas of Erzurum. In Alvar, he studied under his father's guidance and, by 1951, completed his memorization of the Quran. He would later recall those days saying, "As much as I could find time between house chores and tending the animals, I memorized the Quran. Even so, on the days I studied well, I could memorize about half a juz." The Quran became his lifelong compass, shaping his thoughts, his heart, and his mission. Reflecting on it later, he said, "But I must say with complete sincerity, every time I read it, it was as if I was discovering a new horizon, new continents. I believe that everyone who gives their heart to it must feel the same." In the summer of 1952, he officially began his madrasa education in the neighboring village of Kurshunlu, learning tajweed under Haji Sıtkı Efendi. Each day he would walk 7 to 8 kilometers to reach his teacher. With the encouragement of Almarlı Efe Hazretleri, he later moved to Erzurum to continue his studies at the Kurshunlu Mosque Madrasa. His progress was swift. Within 2.5 months, he surpassed students who had been there for more than a year. In the years that followed, he studied in many madrasas under various scholars, spending every waking moment in class, in study, or in contemplation over what he had learned. At the age of 14, he delivered his first sermon, stepping in for his father. At first, he felt a wave of nervousness, but it quickly gave way to passion. What followed was a remarkable sermon that moved the congregation deeply. Many were so affected that they nearly lost themselves in emotion. That first sermon in Allah marked a turning point. The following year, during Ramadan, at his father's insistence, he decided to travel beyond Erzurum. Throughout the holy month, he journeyed through Amasya, Tokat, and Sivas, delivering sermons that would ignite hearts and signal the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The passing of Almarlı Efe Hazretleri during those years would leave a deep mark on Fethullah Gülen. He would later describe it as one of the most shaking moments of his life. He could not recall exactly when he had first come to know the saintly Imam of Allah. For as long as he could remember, both his parents had drawn from that pure and spiritual spring. He had been a child, barely 16 years old, when Efe Hazretleri departed this world. In his own words, he confessed that even in his immaturity, his earliest awareness, his first stirrings of faith were awakened by that radiant soul. Whatever I can sense, feel, and intuit today, he once said, I owe to the impressions that his spirit left upon my heart in those youthful days. The loss of Almarlı Efe Hazretleri was not merely the death of a man. It was the fading of a light that had quietly illuminated the hearts of thousands. Yet in that sorrow, a seed was planted in Fethullah's soul, a vow, silent but certain, to carry forward the same flame of guidance, love, and service that Efe Hazretleri had kindled in his time. This new flame found new nourishment in Erzurum. While studying there, he attended lessons given by Muzaffar Aslan, a distinguished student of Bediüzzaman Said Nursi. Through those lessons, Fethullah Gülen was introduced to the Risale-i Nur, the luminous writings that would shape his spiritual outlook for life. He was captivated by what he heard. The depth of those discussions drew him in completely. What moved him most was Muzaffar Aslan had the other students of Ustad Said Nursi, their humility, their sincerity, their life that mirrored that of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. I was already someone in love with the companions, Fethullah would later recall. And when I saw him, I said to myself, these are the people I have been searching for. From that moment on, I never thought of leaving again. From the passing of Almarlı Efe Efendi to the discovery of the Risale-i Nur, his journey of faith deepened, shaped by the light of mentors, the legacy of saints, and a growing conviction that knowledge, devotion, and service must walk hand in hand. The boy who once whispered prayers beside his mother's rug was now walking into the wide world. His heart, still wrapped in the scent of that humble home, was restless, not for fame, but for truth. He left the mountains of Erzurum and crossed the plains of Anatolia with a single mission: to seek knowledge that could heal both mind and soul. With his father's urging and his mother's hesitant consent, Fethullah set out from Erzurum to Edirne, marking his first great journey away from home. A family relative, Hüseyin Top Hoca, welcomed him and helped him settle in. In those early months, he led prayers and gave sermons in a small neighborhood mosque called Ak Masjid, where sincerity and passion quickly drew the attention of the locals. On August 6, 1959, he began his first official duty as the second imam of the historic Üç Şerefeli Mosque. He lived simply in a small window cell that barely had enough room for him to lay down next to his collection of books. Yet that humble room became his sanctuary, a place of study, reflection, and quiet prayer. What mattered to him was not comfort, but the calling itself, the chance to serve, to teach, and to grow in faith. It was a beginning marked by sincerity and sacrifice, one that would carry him far beyond the minarets of Edirne and into the hearts of countless souls he would one day inspire. He served humbly in Edina until 1961, when he was called to military duty. Those years were harsh, marked by discipline, long days, and the quiet trials of conscience. Even in uniform, he could not silence the voice within him that longed to speak of faith. He continued to give sermons in mosques where he was stationed, a devotion that occasionally brought him into trouble with his superiors. The strain of those days eventually took its toll, and illness forced him to return to Erzurum, where he spent nearly a year recovering. But his heart remained drawn to Edirne. After his recovery, he returned once more, resuming his mission where it had begun. On July 4, 1964, he took up duty as a Quran teacher and honorary imam of the Darul Hadith Mosque. For a short while, he shared a small house with the newly appointed mufti of the city and lifelong friend, Professor Dr. Swat Yildirim. Within the modest walls of the mosque's imam room, he began holding intimate lessons and heartfelt gatherings. That small chamber soon became the cradle of a growing movement of learning and service. He would later recall that these were among the most blessed days of his life. Days when, in the quiet corners of Edirne, a new generation of students began to awaken under his care. What had started in a humble room would one day ripple far beyond the city, carrying the same spirit of sincerity and devotion that had always guided his path.